All right, so chapter 10 is about meiosis. Meiosis is another type of cell cycle, but in this case, there's going to be two parts to it, and the end result is going to be a haploid cell, which is different from mitosis, which produced diploid cells. A few key terms before we begin chapter 10. What exactly is a gene? A gene is a small segment of DNA that codes for basic unit of heredity or codes for a basic trait. Now, we already know that offspring acquire genes from their parents, and what we inherit are the chromosomes. The process of acquiring traits is heredity and what we study in genetics. When we look at a chromosome, like in the bottom left-hand corner, we're looking at two homologous chromosomes. When we look at one gene, a specific location of a gene, it's called a locus or a loci. Organisms have two methods of reproduction. Some organisms reproduce asexually, and other organisms reproduce sexually. Asexual reproduction is a process in which the offspring will be clones. They should be genetically identical to the parent. For sexual reproduction, there has to be gamete cells present for fertilization. So these are going to be the sex cells, which are made during meiosis. For asexual reproduction, there's going to be one parent, and for sexual reproduction, there needs to be two parents, a male and a female, for fertilization. Asexual reproduction, because the offspring is going to be a clone, there really isn't any variation. The only variation, the only differences in traits that you're going to see in a population is if there's random mutation taking place. In sexual reproduction, there's going to be a lot of variation, similar to what I was saying in class with siblings. You are not identical even though you have the same two parents. Asexual reproduction is in terms of ATP, in terms of energy consumption. It is a fast and energy efficient method of reproducing for these simple organisms. Sexual reproduction, making multicellular organisms, billions, trillions of cells, it is a slower and very energy consumptive process. Asexual reproduction, budding is an example, in bacteria reproducing via binary fission, that is also asexual, identical clones to the parent. And for sexual reproduction, we already know humans, animals, trees reproduce that way. When we look at a nucleus and the chromosomes within the nucleus, we need to get very comfortable understanding how many chromosomes there are. Is it a diploid or a haploid cell? And how many sister chromatids there are. So when we look at the somatic cell on the picture, we can see that it is a diploid cell. Now, how would we know that it's a diploid cell? Well, for one, it says 2N, so that indicates that it is. But when you look at it, I've drawn arrows showing the same chromosomes have the same relative size. So those are going to be homologous. So when I look at this overall nucleus, I see 3 homologous chromosomes, 3 different kinds or sizes of chromosomes. Now, for mom is usually going to be drawn in red, and dad is going to be drawn in or colored in blue. Overall, although there are 3 different kind of chromosomes, it's a diploid cell, so 6 chromosomes. Again, 3 maternal and 3 paternal. Now, this nucleus, the DNA or the chromosome, has been duplicated. So you can see it's glued to another piece. Sometimes it's going to be drawn as an X. So when it is duplicated and together held by a centromere, that is going to be called a sister chromatid. So it can be a little bit confusing with the different terms. So overall, there's 6 chromosomes. It's a diploid cell, so there's 3 different kinds of chromosomes. And I don't know that you'll ever be asked, but grand total, you have 12 sister chromatids. How do geneticists study DNA and chromosomes? They look at a karyotype. So this karyotype is going to give a clear, complete picture of how many chromosomes are in a somatic body cell. So looking at the picture, again, you have 23 pairs, or 46 strands, or 46 chromosomes. One, again, maternal and one paternal. Now, because you have 23 pairs, usually the first pair is going to be the longest chromosome. And then gradually, as you go across the karyotype into the 22nd, they get smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, try to remember that 23rd pair is your sex chromosomes determining gender. The first thing that you would need to do if you were making a karyotype of unsorted chromosomes, you would want to pair them up. Similar sized chromosomes go together. And then the second thing that you also look at are the G bands or the gene bands. Once you've sorted your karyotype, again, the first 22 would be the autosomal chromosomes, and the 23rd pair would be your sex chromosomes. We can see by this karyotype that this is a female because there are 2 chromosomes for X. This karyotype, although it is just using an illustration for the chromosomes, the homologous pairs, you can hopefully see when you look at 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, there should be 2, maternal and paternal. But if you keep scrolling down, when you get to the 21st, you can see it's no longer a pair. When you have 3 chromosomes for a particular number, it's called trisomy. So this individual has trisomy 21, which is a genetic abnormality. One way in determining whether or not a cell is cancerous is by looking at the somatic body cells. When we look at this karyotype, you can see chromosome pair should be 2, but there's 3. Chromosome 2 should be another pair, and there are 6 chromosomes there. So there's a lot more chromosomes than 46 present. This is an example of metastatic melanoma, which is a type of skin cancer. So an organism's life cycle is the reproductive history of the organism from conception to production of the offspring, of its own offspring. Now, in organisms like us, we go through fertilization and meiosis, and we alternate. So meiosis is going to be the type of cell division that reduces the number of chromosomes from diploid to haploid and makes our gamete cells. And then once we've made the gamete cells, if they are fertilized, that's the process of combining egg and sperm cells. A fertilized egg is called a zygote, and zygote cells are diploid. The zygote cell then divides and divides and divides and divides by mitosis to make multicellular diploid organisms. So this is why it is alternating, because initially, again, there's fertilization, our body cells are made by mitosis, and then meiosis makes our gamete cells, and then when we have offspring, fertilization, and it cycles and cycles and cycles.